How Apuleius by roses and prayer returned to his humane shape. When midnight came that I had slept my first sleep, I awaked with sudden fear, and saw the moon shining bright, as when she is at the full, and seeming as though she leaped out of the sea. Then thought I with myself, that was the most secret time, when the goddess Ceres had most puissance and force, considering that all humane things be governed by her providence, and not only all beasts private and tame, but also all wild and savage beasts be under her protection. And considering that all bodies in the heavens, the earth, and the seas, be by her increasing motions increased, and by her diminishing motions diminished, as weary of all my cruel fortune and calamity, I found good hope and sovereign remedy, though it were very late, to be delivered from all my misery, by invocation and prayer, to the excellent beauty of the goddess, whom I saw shining before mine eyes. Wherefore, shaking off mine assy and drowsy sleep, I arose with a joyful face, and, moved by a great affection to purify myself, I plunged myself 7 times into the water of the sea, which number of 7 is conveniable and agreeable to holy and divine things, as the worthy and sage philosopher Pythagoras hath declared. Then with a weeping countenance, I made this orison to the puissant goddess, saying, O blessed Queen of Heaven, whether thou be the Dame Ceres which art the original and motherly nurse of all fruitful things in earth, who after the finding of thy daughter Proserpina, through the great joy which thou didst presently conceive, madest barren and unfruitful ground to be ploughed and sown, and now thou inhabitest in the land of Eleusis, or whether thou be the celestial Venus, who in the beginning of the world didst couple together all kind of things with an engendered love, by an eternal propagation of humane kind, art now worshipped within the temples of the isle Paphos, thou which art the sister of the god Phoebus, who nourishes so many people by the generation of beasts, and art now adored at the sacred places of Ephesus, thou which art horrible Proserpina, by reason of the deadly howlings which thou yieldest, that hast power to stop and put away the invasion of the hags and ghosts which appear unto men, and to keep them down in the closures of the earth, thou which art worshipped in divers manners, and doest illuminate all the borders of the earth by thy feminine shape, thou which nourishest all the fruits of the world by thy vigor and force, with whatsoever name or fashion it is lawful to call upon thee, I pray thee, to end my great travail and misery, and deliver me from the wretched fortune, which had so long time pursued me. Grant peace and rest if it please thee to my adversities, for I have endured too much labor and peril. Remove from me my shape of mine assy, and render to me my pristine estate, and if I have offended in any point of divine majesty, let me rather die than live, for I am full weary of my life. When I had ended this orison, and discovered my plaints to the goddess, I fortuned to fall asleep, and by appeared unto me a divine and venerable face, worshipped even of the gods themselves. Then by little and little I seemed to see the whole figure of her body, mounting out of the sea and standing before me, wherefore I purpose to describe her divine semblance, if the poverty of my humane speech will suffer me, or her divine power give me eloquence thereto. First she had a great abundance of hair, dispersed and scattered about her neck. On the crown of her head she bare many garlands interlaced with flowers. In the middle of her forehead was a compasse in fashion of a glass, or resembling the light of the moon. In one of her hands she bare serpents, in the other, blades of corn. Her vestiment was of fine silk yielding divers colors, sometime yellow, sometime rosy, sometime flamy, and sometime, which troubled my spirit sore, dark and obscure, covered with a black robe in manner of a shield, and pleated in most subtle fashion at the skirts of her garments. The welts appeared comely, whereas here and there the stars glimpsed, and in the middle of them was placed the moon, which shone like a flame of fire. Round about the robe was a coronet or garland made with flowers and fruits. In her right hand she had a timbrel of brass, which gave a pleasant sound. In her left hand she bare a cup of gold, out of the mouth whereof the serpent Aspes lifted up his head, with a swelling throat. Her odoriferous feet were covered with shoes interlaced and wrought with victorious palm. Thus the divine shape breathing out the pleasant spice of fertile Arabia, disdained not with her divine voice to utter these words unto me, Behold Lucius the first am come, thy weeping and prayers hath moved me to succor thee. I am she that is the natural mother of all things, mistress and governess of all the elements, the initial progeny of worlds, chief of powers divine, queen of heaven. The principal of the gods celestial, the light of the goddesses, at my will the planets of the air, the wholesome winds of the seas, and the silences of hell be deposed. My name, my divinity is adored throughout all the world in diverse manners, in variable customs and in many names, for the Phrygians call me the mother of the gods, the Athenians, Minerva, the Cyprians, Venus, the Candians, Diana, the Sicilians Proserpina, the Eleusinians, Ceres, some Juno, other Bellona, other Hecate, and principally the Ethiopians which dwell in the Orient, and the Egyptians which are excellent in all kind of ancient doctrine, and by their proper ceremonies accustomed to worship me, do call me Queen Isis. Behold, I am come to take pity of thy fortune and tribulation. Behold, I am present to favor and aid thee. Leave off thy weeping and lamentation, put away all thy sorrow, for behold the healthful day which is ordained by my providence, therefore be ready to attend to my commandment. This day which shall come after this night, is dedicated to my service, by an eternal religion. My priests and ministers do accustom after the tempests of the sea, be ceased, to offer in my name a new ship as a first fruit of my navigation. I command thee not to profane or despise the sacrifice in any wise, for the great priest shall carry this day following in procession by my exhortation, a garland of roses, next the timbrel of his right hand. Follow thou my procession amongst the people, and when thou comest to the priest make as though thou wouldest kiss his hand, but snatch at the roses, whereby I will put away the skin and shape of an asse, which kind of beast I have long time abhorred and despised, but above all things. Beware thou doubt not nor fear any of those things, as hard and difficile to be brought to passe, for in the same hour that I am come to thee, I have commanded the priest by a vision what he shall do, and all the people by my commandment shall be compelled to give thee place and say nothing. Moreover, think not that amongst so fair and joyful ceremonies, and in so good a company that any person shall abhor thy ill-favored and deformed figure, or that any man shall be so hardy, as to blame and reprove thy sudden restoration to humane shape, were they should gather or conceive any sinister opinion. And know thou this of certain, that the residue of thy life until the hour of death shall be bound and subject to me. And think it not an injury to be always serviceable towards me, since as by my mean and benefit thou shalt become a man, thou shalt live blessed in this world, thou shalt live glorious by my guide and protection, and when thou descendest to hell, where thou shalt see me shine in that subterrene place, shining, as thou sayest me now, in the darkness of Acheron, and reigning in the deep profundity of Styx, thou shalt worship me, as one that hath been favorable to thee, and if I perceive that thou art obedient to my commandment, addict to my religion, and merite my divine grace, know thou, that I will prolong thy days above the time that the fates have appointed, and the celestial planets ordained. When the divine image had spoken these words, she vanished away. By and by when I awaked, I arose, having the members of my body mixed with fear, joy and sweat, and marvelled at the clear presence of the puissant goddess, and being sprinkled with the water of the sea, I recounted orderly her admonitions and divine commandments. Soon after, the darkness chased away, and the clear and golden sun arose, when as behold I saw the streets replenished with people going in a religious sort and in great triumph. All things seemed that day to be joyful, as well all manner of beasts and houses, as also the very day itself seemed to rejoice. For after the hoarfrost, ensued the hot and temperate sun, whereby the little birds weening that the springtime had been come, did chirp and sing in their Stephen melodiously, the mother of stars, the parent of times, and mistress of all the world. The fruitful trees rejoiced at their fertility, the barren and sterile were contented at their shadow, rendering sweet and pleasant shrills. The seas were quiet from winds and tempests, the heaven had chased away the clouds, and appeared fair and clear with his proper light. Behold then more and more appeared the pomps and processions, attired in regal manner and singing joyfully. One was girded about the middle like a man of arms, another bare and spare, and had a cloak and high shoes like a hunter. Another was attired in a robe of silka, and socks of gold, having his hair laid out, and dressed in for me of a woman. There was another wear leg harness, and bare a target, a sallet, and a spear like a martial soldier. After him marched one attired in purple with vergers before him like a magistrate. After him followed one with a moral, a staff, a pair of pantofles, and with a grey beard, signifying a philosopher. After him went one with lime, betokening a fowler, another with hooks declaring a fisher. I saw there a meek and tame bear, which in matron habit was carried on a stool, an ape with a bonnet on his head, and covered with lawn, resembling a shepherd, and bearing a cup of gold in his hand, an asse which had wings glued to his back, and went after an old man, whereby you would judge the one to be Pegasus, and the other Bellerophon. Amongst the pleasures and popular delectations, which wandered hither and thither. You might see the pampa of the goddess triumphantly march forward, the woman attired in white vestments, and rejoicing, in that they bear garlands and flowers upon their heads, bedspread the ways with harpies, which they bear in their aprons, where this regal and devout procession should pass. Other carried glasses on their bacchus, to testify obeisance to the goddess which came after. Other bare combs of ivory, and declared by their gesture and motions of their arms, that they were ordained and ready to dress the goddess. Others dropped in the ways as they went balm and other precious ointments. Then came a great number, as well of men as women, with candles, torches, and other lights, doing honor to the celestial goddess. After that sounded the musical harmony of instruments. Then came a fair company of youth, apparelled in white vestments, singing both meter and verse, with a comely grade which some studious poet had made in honor of the Muses. In the mean season, arrived the blowers of trumpets, which were dedicated unto Serapis, and to the temple before them were officers and beadles, preparing room for the goddess to pass. Then came the great company of men and women, which had taken divine orders, whose garments glistered all the streets over. The women had their hair anointed and their heads covered with linen, but the men had their crowns shaven, which were the terrene stars of the goddess, holding in their hand instruments of brass, silver, and gold, which rendered a pleasant sound. The principal priests, which were apparelled with white surplices hanging down to the ground, bare the relics of the puissant goddess. One carried in his hand a light, not unlike to those which we used in our houses, saving that in the middle thereof appeared a bowl which rendered a more bright flame. The second attired like the other bare in his hand an altar, which the goddess herself named the Succor of Nations. The third held a tree of palm with leaves of gold, and the verge of Mercury. The fourth shewed out a token of equity by his left hand, which was deformed in every place, signifying thereby more equity than by the right hand. The same priest carried a round vessel of gold, infirmity of a cap. The fifth bare a van, wrought with springs of gold, and another carried a vessel for wine. By and by after the goddess followed afoot as men do, and specially Mercury, the messenger of the goddess infernal and supernal, with his face sometime black, sometime fair, lifting up the head of the dog's Anubis, and bearing in his left hand his verge, and in his right hand the branches of a palm tree, after whom followed a cow with an upright gait, representing the figure of the great goddess, and he that guided her marched on with much gravity. Another carried after the secrets of their religion, closed in a coffer. There was one that bare on his stomach a figure of his god, not formed like any beast, bird, savage thing or humane shape, but made by a new invention, whereby was signified that such a religion should not be discovered or revealed to any person. There was a vessel wrought with a round bottom, having on the one side pictures figured like unto the manner of the Egyptians, and on the other side was an ear, whereupon stood the serpent Aspes, holding out his scaly neck. Finally came he which was appointed to my good fortune according to the promise of the goddess. For the great priest which bare the restoration of my human shape, by the commandment of the gods, approached more and more, bearing in his left hand the timbrel, and in the other a garland of roses to give me, to the end I might be delivered from cruel fortune, which was always mine enemy, after the sufferance of so much calamity and pain, and after the endurance of so many perils, then I not returning hastily, by reason of so dane joy, lest I should disturb the quiet procession with mine importunity, but going softly through the priests of the people, which gave me place on every side, went after the priest. The priest being admonished the night before, as I might well perceive stood still and holding out his hand, thrust out the garland of roses into my mouth. I, trembling, devoured with a great affection, and as soon as I had eaten them, I was not deceived of the promise made unto me. For my deformed and assy face abated, and first the rugged hair of my body fell off, my thick skin waxed soft and tender, the hoofs of my feet changed into toes, my hands returned again, my neck grew short, my head and mouth began round, my long ears were made little, my great and stony teeth waxed less like the teeth of men, and my tail which cumbered me most, appeared nowhere. Then the people began to marvel, and the religious honored the goddess, for so evident a miracle. They wondered at the visions which they saw in the night, and the facility of my reformation, whereby they rendered testimony of so great a benefit which I received of the goddess. When I saw myself in such a state, I stood still a good space and said nothing, for I could not tell what to say, nor what word I should first speak, nor what thanks I should render to the goddess. But the great priest, understanding all my fortune and misery, by divine advertisement, commanded that one should give me garments to cover me. Howbeit as soon as I was transformed from an asse to my humane shape, I hid the privity of my body with my hands as shame and necessity compelled me. Then one of the company put off his upper robe and put it on my back, which done, the priest looked upon me, with a sweet and benign voice, gone say in this sort, O my friend Lucius, after the endurance of so many labors, and the escape of so many tempests of fortune, thou art at length come to the port and haven of rest and mercy, neither did thy noble lineage, thy dignity, thy doctrine, or anything prevail, but that thou hast endured so many servile pleasures, by a little folly of thy youthfulness, whereby thou hast had a sinister reward for thy unprosperous curiosity. But howsoever the blinds of fortune tormented thee in divers dangers, so it is, that now unwares to her, thou art come to this present felicity. Let fortune go, and fume with fury in another place, let her find some other matter to execute her cruelty, for fortune hath no puissance against them which serve and honor our goddess. For what availed the thieves, the beasts savage, thy great servitude, the ill and dangerous waits, the long passages, the fear of death every day? Know thou, that now thou art safe, and under the protection of her, who by her clear light doth lighten the other gods, wherefore rejoice and take a convenable countenance to thy white habit, follow the pomp of this devout and honorable procession, to the end that such which be not devout to the gods, may see and acknowledge their error. Behold Lucius, thou art delivered from so great miseries, by the providence of the goddess Isis, rejoice therefore in triumph of the victory of fortune, to the end thou mayst live more safe and sure, make thyself one of this holy order, dedicate thy men to the obsequy of our religion, and take upon thee a voluntary yoke of ministry, and when thou beginnest to serve and honor the gods, then thou shalt feel the fruit of thy liberty. After that the great priest had prophesied in this manner, with often breathings, he made a conclusion of his words. Then I went amongst the company of the rest and followed the procession. Every one of the people knew me, and pointing at me with their fingers, said in this sort, Behold him who is this day transformed into a man by the puissance of the sovereign goddess. Verily he is blessed and most blessed that hath merited so great grace from heaven, as by the innocency of his former life, and as it were by a new regeneration is reserved to the obsequy of the goddess. In the mean season by little and little we approached nigh unto the sea coast, even to that place where I lay the night before being an asse. Thereafter the images and relics were orderly disposed, the great priest compassed about with divers pictures according to the fashion of the Egyptians, did dedicate and consecrate with certain prayers a fair ship made very cunningly, and purified the same with a torch, and eggy, and sulphur. The sail was of white linen cloth, whereon was written certain letters, which testified the navigation to be prosperous. The mast was of a great length, made of a pine tree, round and very excellent with a shining top. The cabin was covered over with coverings of gold, and all the ship was made of citron tree very fair. Then all the people as well religious as profane took a great number of men, replenished with odors and pleasant smells, and threw them into the sea mingled with milk, until the ship was filled up with large gifts and prosperous devotions, when as with a pleasant wind it launched out into the deep. But when they had lost the sight of the ship, every man carried a gain that he brought, and went toward the temple in like pomp and order as they came to the seaside. When we were come to the temple, the great priest and those which were deputed to carry the divine figures, but especially those which had long time been worshippers of the religion, went into the secret chamber of the goddess, where they put and placed the images according to their order. This done, one of the company which was a scribe or interpreter of letters, who infirmy of a preacher stood up in a chair before the place of the holy college, and began to read out of a book, and to interpret to the great prince, the senate, and to all the noble order of chivalry, and generally to all the Roman people, and to all such as be under the jurisdiction of Rome, these words following, Laus Ephesus, which signified the end of their divine service, and that it was lawful for every man to depart, whereat all the people gave a great shout, and replenished with much joy, bare all kind of herbs and garlands of flowers home to their houses, kissing and embracing the steps where the goddess passed. Howbeit I could not do as the rest, for my mind would not suffer me to depart 1 foot away, so attentive was I to behold the beauty of the goddess, with remembrance of the great misery I had endured.